air pollution with policy is what Dr. Punima went through earlier. And these are just some of the statistics from about health with respect to air pollution. And it's one of the main sort of top 10 causes for deaths and also for tallies, which is what is here in this data. So I won't go into the details in here. So why did we start and think of doing the study? The objectives of the study were to see how the process of establishment of NAAQS had actually happened, the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. How was the implementation of these standards across various states in the country? And I'll go over the methodology in the next slide. What was the role of health in the policy design and implementation of these standards? And finally, what are the institutional and informational barriers which impede some of the implementation of the existing regulations or standards in the country? And for this, we will primarily focus on ambient air quality because that's what essentially pollution control boards are trying to do at the moment across states. So this is the study methodology. If you can see the map here, you'll see that we picked out 8 states in the country and we went to 8 pollution control boards located in the capital cities of each of these states, which was a geographic representation across the country, which was Maharashtra, Goa, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, which are the industrial areas, Odisha, and Andhra Pradesh. And the criteria which was used for selecting these states was, first, they were geographically representative. Secondly, it was a distribution or a mix of high and low annual average PM 2.5 levels across these various states. And third is any states where any new innovations or anything which was some new technology which was implemented to improve air quality by the states themselves. So any particular additions to the national ambient standards by the states. And one important thing to note here is that we dropped out Gujarat from the study after several months of trying to pursue and seek interviews with officials at the GPCB. So finally, we decided to go with 8 states instead of 9 because of that factor. So the primary research was conducted in these states, and it was over 30 key informant interviews, and some of the officials and ex-officials which were interviewed at CPCB and the respective state pollution control boards included member secretary, chairman, and environmental scientists and engineers, lab in charges, scientific officers, among others. And to bring about a whole sort of a holistic perspective, we also spoke to other bureaucrats and academics, as well as civil society who works in areas of air pollution, both across the states as well as nationally. And secondary literature primarily consisted of historical and current policies on air pollution and its impacts on health, as well as other policy documents and reports over the years. So now I'll just move on to the findings of the study. The first is the institutional capacity. So what we got to know is that, and this may not come as much of a surprise, is that there has been no proportionate increase in manpower with the expansion of the duties of the pollution control boards over time. So in all the states that we visited, which were eight states, more than 50% of the posts were pretty much vacant, and a majority of them were technical posts. So the shortage of staff essentially means that there is inadequate monitoring, but also specifically with respect to industrial areas where are not as frequent inspections as should be. And some states like Maharashtra, which are well resourced and well funded, also had like some close to like 0.6 times inspection for each industry, which is less than 1 in a year, in a complete year. There are low salaries which are paid for some of the very highly technical work, which fails to retain and attract more staff or more technical talent. And most of the employees, or a majority of the employees, are also hired on a contractual basis, which again leads to lower worker motivation, and essentially they're unable to retain them. And of course, there's a need for technological advancements because, but lack of funds kind of proves to be a hindrance for this. In terms of leadership, um, the highest positions in the pollution control boards are seen as administrative positions instead of technical positions. And that was something which was across the board. So leadership across all 8 pollution control boards and pollution control boards in general across the country do not have a scientific or environmental background. So their officials and officials who are in the position of, say, member secretary as well as chairman or chairperson are almost always holding multiple portfolios as bureaucrats rather than just uh, at the helm of pollution control boards, and that seeks to like take away from their responsibilities and time which they can allocate to PCBs. Secondly, there is no prerequisite qualification for members of the pollution control boards, and it's a very vague statement which says having special knowledge or practical experience in respect of matters relating to environmental protection, which does not say much in terms of who is qualified to be a member of PCBs and who is not. One of the key findings of the study was a general lack of motivation and accountability across officials of the pollution control board, and there's a general sentiment of pollution control boards officials feeling that they don't have any real authority, and they're a technical advisory body which cannot take any action but can only provide advice to other departments and other government bodies. So the duty of the PCB has been diluted from a regulatory body to a facilitating body. That's what one of our informants told us. And they also feel that the process of establishment of the standards was not inclusionary. So none of the interviewees had any knowledge about why the standards had been set at a particular level. We all know that the India standards are slightly above the WHO standards, but why that was the case, why the decision was taken, no one knows. The standards are seen not as a baseline, but as a gold standard across states. So they don't want to improve on or make stringent, more stringent standards for the various states. They just follow what's been given to them by the center. And as I said, whatever they give, we have to follow. That's a general sentiment across all pollution control boards. In addition to this, they were not even provided SOPs, and which also kind of leads to a general feeling of disenchantment and detachment across all pollution control boards. And there are 2 long quotes which I won't talk about, but if you, I'll just leave this on the screen for a minute. Um, Basically, they say that state boards were not involved, and we only provide data on air quality. And this is also partly why people don't understand why these standards, what these standards are, because there was no wide consultation. It was a top-down approach. It was the Ministry of Forest and Environment which modified the standards, but they're not aware, and they were just notified and they're expected to follow it. So these are 2 specific quotes, but this was a general sentiment across the board. In addition to this, there is a lack of coordination and convergence across various departments, and this again is not something which is new, but this is specifically true for pollution control boards because they anyway feel like they're a facilitating body and they don't have any real authority. So this kind of adds to that, where they're just looking at the air quality data and telling other departments that, okay, this is it. And this is one of the quotes which says there are no difficulties in implementation. So they don't even think that there are difficulties in implementation, because if the standard is 200, it's above the expected, air quality is 200, it's above the expected or supposed level or standard. But they say that that's fine, and we don't have any real authority anyway. We don't have any role to say to transport department to, like, do something about it. And as far as integration is concerned related to pollution and health, there is no integration as such at present. There are no timelines or coordination mechanisms to complete tasks by various stakeholder departments in the action plans, which also, again, hinders the process of implementation. And they see pollution control boards see environmental clearances, issuing environmental clearances as their most primary responsibility. In addition to this, there are some challenges with technical capacity which lead to concerns of quality and utility of the data which is generated. So because the monitoring is not as frequent as it should be, there are gaps in the data, and there are calibrations don't happen at the level which they should happen, which also leads to kind of faulty readings. And of course, there is more monitoring which is needed in the rural areas, which also circles back to the point about need for more funds as well as staff. Now, understanding the health impacts of air pollution. So there are like serious misconceptions about the relationship of air pollution with health. So pollution control boards officials say things like standards are meant for Europeans and not Indians. And the resistance of Indians is so much more, which is why it's fine if we have air quality levels which are higher than other European countries. Because we wanted to take the focus away from Delhi, but pollution control board officials compared their states to Delhi constantly in almost all states that we visited, and they said air pollution is not an alarm bell for us yet, and the levels are so much worse in Delhi. And one of the member secretaries of one of the states that we visited said, "I'm not aware of any health impacts of air pollution at all, and but if there are not many major ones," which again kind of circles back to misconception, misunderstanding, or just not enough importance given to the health impacts of air pollution. So these essentially are then our findings or the challenges in the implementation of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So some of the recommendations that we have is addressing leadership and human resource needs. So more training, more advanced technology, and appointing people with technical expertise in leadership positions for a fixed term and full-time roles. Then strengthening the center-state relationship with the mindset that CPCB sort of guides the SPCBs on how to go about their tasks, and also improve efficiency by way of reviewing their actions. Expansion of monitoring capacity is an obvious one. I don't think I need to go into that. Financial resource mobilization. So they should try and increase finances by way of either introducing some kind of environmental regulation cess, or states could increase their own earmarked contributions to the SPCBs. Then engaging the health community and other stakeholders is something which is extremely important. As of now, it feels that PCBs are kind of working independently, um, or with really minimal interaction with other departments or other stakeholders. So it'll be efficient to bring in multi-stakeholders and bring like a broad sectoral engagement, which will help in improving the standards or just the quality of air. And finally, the strengthening the evidence base, which is also something which needs to be considered, and bringing in the local institutions in each of these states to do more source apportionment or health studies, which can also kind of strengthen the evidence base for these respective states, because a lot of officials also said that there is no or not enough data or evidence which is available, so they can't really do much about health with respect to air pollution in their respective states. With that, I think that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidushi. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation of some very insightful findings from that work. Important work, no doubt, and I'm sure it's stimulated a lot of questions in our audience as well, which we will take at the end. And thank you for being a part of this study and actually being on the ground doing this work. So now I'm going to turn over to the panel and welcome our panelists for the next part of this program. I'm just going to briefly introduce all of them and then give each of them about 8 to 10 minutes to kind of share their initial thoughts on this study and what they think and what their perspectives are on the implications of these study findings. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us this evening. Introducing the panelists, we have with us Dr. Abhijit Pathak, who's a senior scientist at the Central Pollution Control Board. Welcome, Dr. Pathak. Dr. Pathak has previously worked as a project board member in bilateral projects between India and Finland in the field of fugitive emissions and odor monitoring. He has published various research reports and papers. He's the co-author of the document on guidelines for continuous emission monitoring systems in India, published by the CPCB. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Pathak. We have also with us today Dr. Jayanta Motra, who's the Vice President of the Indian Association for Air Control, Delhi chapter. He's also the Director of EMRTC Consultants Private Limited, is an environment expert and an EI for mining and open cast underground mining, thermal power plants, metallurgical industries, cement plants, and coal washery. Thank you, Dr. Moitra, and welcome to the panel today. We are also delighted to be joined today by a representative from the DPCP, Dr. MP George. He's a senior scientist, air laboratory at the Delhi Pollution Control Committee, DPCC, New Delhi. He he's in charge of the laboratories and responsible for all the air and noise monitoring. He also handles the continuous ambient air quality monitoring and online noise monitoring in Delhi. Welcome, Dr. George, and thank you for joining us. And last but not the least, I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Bhargav Krishna, who was earlier working with us at the Center for Environmental Health in PHFI and is currently on study leave as a doctoral candidate at the Harvard School of Public Health. Bhargav also co-founded Care for Air, a nonprofit working for achieving better air quality in India, and was closely involved in conceptualizing and doing this work. So thank you all of you for joining us this evening. I'm going to now give each of you, the panelists, about 8 minutes to share your thoughts on the study findings. And I want to start with Bhargav, and then we'll go on to the other panelists. So Bhargav, would you like to take the floor and share your experience on doing this study, why you thought it was necessary, and maybe ruminate a little bit on what you think about the outcomes?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Purnima, for having me and for organizing this webinar. And thank you also for all of the other panelists for joining us this evening. At the start, when we were kind of conceptualizing the study, the core question that we really had in our mind was trying to understand what the gaps are or what the barriers are at implementing these national policies at the state level. And really at the core of it, understanding whether health really matters in decision making at some of these levels. And it's kind of the scope of the work expanded as we went along and as we interviewed additional individuals. But this was really the core question. Is there an understanding of what the health impacts are? What role does health play in decision making around air quality issues at the state level, especially around critically polluted areas, for instance? And how is this? What are the barriers in implementing existing regulations, and what can we do to strengthen those capacity challenges that we have at the state level so that we can move towards achieving these action plans that have been set forward for each of these non-attainment cities? So when we were interacting with individuals, I think the first thing that came across was that a lot of the people that we had interviewed were really well-intentioned in wanting to do their job well. I think the challenge was in understanding or in their own understanding of what their roles were. As Vidushi spoke about during the presentation, one of the things that came across when we interviewed a number of people was this idea that the role of what a pollution control board is at a state level is widely sort of, or rather narrowly defined as a body that is primarily there to just provide environmental clearances and not necessarily involved in the broader issue of managing an airshed or managing air quality in a particular area. That, I think, was a big finding for us in terms of understanding why policies don't necessarily get implemented in the way that we want them to be as researchers and practitioners in this field. The second aspect that I found particularly interesting was this issue of intersectoral convergence. Now, we've seen even with the new ordinance that was issued to establish the Commission on Air Quality for the National Capital Region, that while there are representatives from the bureaucracy and there are going to be representatives from a couple of NGOs, the one sector that really is not represented there as well, and until very recently, even in the previous iteration of EPCA, was the health sector. There is no representative from the health sector. The core question also of why we did this was the preamble for all of these environmental laws really speak to the primacy of protecting public health, and yet health doesn't factor in decision making at all across the board when it comes to any of these standards that are being set. For instance, the NACs, we asked representatives at state and central pollution control boards why, say, a day 24-hour exposure limit for PM 2.5 was set at whatever limits it's set at, and whether there was a health basis for setting this. Because our comparison essentially was with how, say, the Environmental Protection Agency in the US does this, where there's a scientific review periodically where the epidemiological evidence that is available is taken into account to set particular health standards. This doesn't necessarily happen here, and people weren't necessarily aware of why certain standards were set at where they were set. The second aspect, of course, is across coordination across various departments. So if the environment department or the pollution control board at a state notices that air quality is particularly high, they don't necessarily have the authority or the power to direct other departments, which may be the relevant line departments, to carry out actions necessary to reduce the air pollution load during that particular time. This kind of challenge is across the board. We've seen it even in Delhi, where out of state pollution or transboundary air pollution becomes a problem, and there is no real mechanism of enforcing regulations across state boundaries or even within the state. The third challenge that I found particularly interesting from conducting this work was the issue of capacity. I think Dr. George could probably speak recently of the recently released report also about the number of sanctioned posts for many of these pollution control boards versus the number of posts that have actually been filled. This speaks to a lack of perhaps supply as well as demand in this case. Vidushi brought about during the presentation the issue of motivation and motivation for staff working in technical roles at the pollution control boards, and perhaps this is something we need to explore more deeply in making this a career option that's attractive for individuals who are graduating from say the Indian Institutes of Technology or NITs or any other such technical institute, where this is seen as a career choice that has progression and that has an opportunity to deliver work that is of meaning and of scale. I think these were sort of three of the key things that I took away from this work, but I'm happy to discuss others as we go along.
Yeah, thank you, Bhargav. All pertinent points. And I think coming from the experience of being on the ground doing this work, we'll come back to some of the points that you raised. And I think very importantly so, and I think as public health advocates, it's the mantra, health in all policies is what we want to advocate across the board. And we know from our joint experience of going to these meetings, Bhargav and I, where we've been trying to push the agenda for making health impact assessments as mandatory. We haven't even gotten halfway there, I feel, in those discussions because of the receptiveness that is want in that space. So thank you, Bhargav. And I want to move on now next to Dr. Jayanta Moitra. May I request you, sir, to share your perspectives, immediate thoughts as well on the study and its findings. So you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Purnima, ma'am. I'm grateful to you and the organizers for giving me a chance to speak here. Before, my first career was with the Central Pollution Control Board, and I was posted at Shillong Zonal Office, where we used to look after the 7 sister states. Now in these states, my job was to establish the National Ambient Air Quality Monitoring Stations. And in those days, we have about 100 odd stations across the country. And the job that I was given, it was related to the setting up of instruments, right from the selection of location where the monitoring station should be established. And third, most important part was the training of the personnel who are involved in doing the monitoring. So my point is, we look at in this way that there are 3 questions. One is what we have to monitor. Second is why we are monitoring. And third is how we are monitoring. In this relation, I want to say that there are about 12 parameters that has been set up in 2009. Out of these 12 parameters, we have 4 parameters which are quite critical in terms of WHO guidelines. And these parameters are PM10, PM2.5, SO2, and NO2. And in our state, in our country today, we have 793 monitoring stations. And out of these stations, we are monitoring PM10, SO2, and NO2 in almost all the stations. And we are monitoring, say, PM 2.5 in more than 300 stations. Then we have continuous ambient air monitoring stations in which we are monitoring carbon monoxide and ozone. But the remaining 6 parameters, that is related to benzoapyrene or benzene, and then the particulate matter PM10 has to be analyzed for arsenic, nickel, and arsenic, nickel, and lead. This we are not monitoring. So there is a huge gap in the standards which we have set in 2009 and our capacity of monitoring as on date. Second thing I want to flag is why we are monitoring. You see, the monitoring data that we are generating, we are using it for various purposes, like say preparation of city action plans. This data is used for preparing the action plan for improvement of air quality in cities. So today we have covered 340 cities across the country, and in these cities we are preparing the action plan, and the non-attainment cities are 124 today. Second thing is the critically industrial areas, critically polluted industrial areas, or the severely polluted industrial areas. This also we are identifying based on the monitoring data that we are obtained from these national stations. Thirdly is the graded response action plan that we are preparing. We all know, particularly in case of Delhi NCR, the EPCA is having a graded response action plan, and all the actions triggered are basically due to the data that we are getting from the national ambient stations. Fourth, I would like to flag is the GRAP I have covered, EPCA, then the critically polluted areas, and city action plan, and the air quality index I would like to talk to. The air quality index that we are giving to the public as a means to understand the relationship between the parameters and what type of air quality it is. This is also based on the data that we are regularly getting from these ambient air monitoring stations. So these ambient air monitoring stations are very important from this 4 point of view. But then how we are monitoring, this requires to be looked at, particularly see the sampling and the testing parameters. These are very sophisticated for the parameters like benzoapyrene or benzene, or for the metallic constituents. And these are relatively easy for parameters like SO2 and NO2 and PM10. But when we monitor PM 2.5, we get very fine particulates in very low quantity. We need sophisticated balances and everything. So my point here is, which I want to stress, that we should have a very good capacity building as well as training of the personnel. Those we are recruiting. So there is a huge shortage of manpower for monitoring the stations, we all know. But then whatever manpower we are recruiting, we need to retain them first of all, and there should be a sufficient capacity building in terms of training these persons. Once they are trained, then only we can be assured that the data that they are generating and giving us, these are quality data, because we are all using this data for our policy making decisions. So in my view, capacity building, training, and this should be looked into, because finances are not a problem in our country today. We have plenty of money in terms of environmental compensation fund that we are having. So data generation should not be a problem. Manpower recruitment should not be a problem. Today, we have to create an institution which can give training, proper training to the personnel, those who are involved in the data generation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Moitra. I think there will be a lot of questions on that. You know, we have recognized that this is the problem in terms of capacity building. That's what needs to be done. Then why not? And you've also said that there's enough financial resources to do so. So we'll come back to that again in the next round. But thank you for sharing your insights on this study. So next, may I invite Dr. Abhijit Pathak. He's the senior scientist at CPCB. Dr. Pathak, from your position at the central authority, please, can you share your perspectives on the findings of this study and what the implications might be?
Yes, thank you for inviting me in this forum. And the things, the way it is presented. So definitely, I am not sure that which state board was taken in consideration. Which state board means a lot of people you might have discussed with a lot of people, but some misconception or some misunderstanding is being created throughout the presentation. This is my first observation, because the Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Board relationship is regularly reviewed through our MS chairman conferences. If a state board is having that concept that CPCB is never consulting state boards before formulating any standards and all these things, I think in a bureaucratic and administrative setup, this type of issues, if a researcher is raising, it will not stand. It will not stand, because there is a lot of scope to deliver, lot of scope to discuss the issues first. Second thing, regarding this implementation of this National Ambient Quality Standard, and another concept, whether it is based on the health based or not, that issue is already resolved, because the 2009 standard is definitely made or created from the dose response curve of WHO, and taking the Indian conditions also in consideration, the values are set. I agree. These values, that discussion also already has been taken up, that whether we should have a uniform standard throughout the country or not, local conditions.
We lost you there, Dr. Pathak. Could you?
Yeah. Local conditions and background conditions, all these things are taken into consideration or not? Sorry, I was not audible here.
No, just very transiently. You're fine. Please continue.
Yeah. Actually, the standards, first thing, it is based on the health, definitely. All the standards. We have calculated these standard values from the dose response curve. Take it, and it is considered the health-based standard. Second thing is that regarding the issues raised by the state boards, see, these issues are should have been discussed with the chairman and members of the country.
Dr. Pathak, we are again not hearing you.
Sorry, I'm getting call. Sorry.
We are not hearing you.
He has to unmute. Ma'am, he has to unmute.
Yeah, no, I think he said he got a call and so it was cut off transiently. Dr. Pathak, are you able to rejoin us?
Sorry, that's the problem in office hours. So actually, what I want to say, see, I accept that the infrastructure facility and the practice. In fact, what I understood, practically the implementation of monitoring and data collection is not being proper. That's why the data quality is remain doubtful. Regarding infrastructure, we can remember most of the state boards, most of the major state boards you have taken, they have all the instruments required. Whether they use it for the NAMP or not, that's the issue. Most of the state boards like UP, Jharkhand, Odisha, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, all are having GC, all are having AS, ICP-MS or ICP-OES. So the analytical problem, infrastructural problem in getting analyzed I think that the case is to be taken in that consideration, that whether they are utilizing those infrastructure in this purpose or not. I agreed in one point. See, as the water is the state subject and air is nobody's subject, so the state boards are taking that avenue to go out, that this is not my pollution, this is coming from other states, and we are not responsible for that one. Third thing is that there is lot of scope in our laws and rules and regulations. I am just surprised to know that the state board is saying if the pollution is rising high and we are nowhere to take action. This is not a right thing to say. They are having that provisions in rules or laws and rules, and they are not initiating, or they are initiating, that is their own prerogative. They are doing it or not doing it. The coordination, I feel the coordination is a problem, definite problem with different agencies in an urban setup. That's the issue. Third thing is that what I feel rightly said or identified in that one, this job of NAMP monitoring and data quality, data generation is a secondary job for the state boards. They consider it as a secondary job because they have other assignments due to the manpower crunch. I agree. So this type of forum, I think they may propose the utilization of the manpower being generated through green skill development program of Government of India. The green skill, because the running a monitoring station in manual monitoring station, I don't think a BTech is required. A normal educated 12 pass candidate, properly trained, can very well run a station if the board is having a will to run the station. So, and funding, regarding funding, every year to run the stations, apart from the capital investment of instrumentation, more than 10-15 crores is being paid to the state boards to run the stations according to the number of stations and number of samples they are collecting. So willpower is the most important one, to have that one. But there are problems, there are issues, definitely. But another thing is that, as it was mentioned, no health expert is consulted during framing of standards. That point really you can raise, and our next division is on the card. So I think we can also initiate that part to include a health. Even in our peer and core committee, who passed the standards last year also, there are some health experts. Dr. Joshi was there, Dr. Daga was there. So this type of people, always CPCB never ignoring the consultancy of the health experts. They are a part and parcel of our standard formulations also. So I think that is another point. So everything is not negative. That with that note, everything is not negative. But that study report is really all the negative things have been coming up. Something has, some positivity is also always there. We should flag those positivities also, and we should eradicate those possibility of negativity too much. So that is my submission. So we should not think in so much negativity in that report. Submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pathak. I will come back maybe to Bhargav afterwards to respond to that. In terms of negativity, I think the study itself was aimed at finding the gaps and the barriers in implementation, and so obviously it picked up what was not happening. We are happy to listen to the positives, but I think what really matters, the bottom line, is in terms of implementation and improved air quality across the board. That's what we want to see, and as public health advocates, that's what we want to see. There should be
another thing I want to add. Recently, we have submitted, CPCB has submitted the utilization of compensation fund, and every state board was communicated to have a station in more than 1 lakh population. 1 lakh population will have one station. More up to 5 lakhs, I think 1 to 5 lakhs. 5 to 10 lakhs will have 4 stations. And as it is, the expansion is on the card, and that the funding will be done in 50-50 basis firstly, or in small scale, small industry, small states or northeastern states, CBCB is funding to on the whole as a whole. So this funding is also taking place, and with the implementation of NCAP, these things will change very soon. That's the hope we have.
Well, we will also hope and think positive going forwards, but really we would like to see the outcomes as well. And we look to work with the regulatory bodies to make that happen as best as we can in terms of the health discourse coming into all of your discussions. So last but not the least, now I'd like to invite Dr. MP George. Dr. George is from the DPCB, and this was not one of the cities that was part of our study, but it'd be very interesting to hear from him on what he thinks about the findings and the perspectives from the other state pollution control board officials in this study. So Dr. George, welcome, and we look forward to hear from you now.
Dr. Purnima, what I feel, I'm audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah, so I want to start with that. The public perception and scientific facts always generally don't match. And what I feel in this study, either sample size is wrong, or the person whom your team is include is not enough senior people, and they gave the answer very casual. Why? If they don't know what's the power of a state board, I'm surprised. Politicians are allowed, and the state board can't move the state machinery. Surprised what I am seeing here since last 10 years. On the just a call, just a warning sign, first alarm bell, when we implement the GRAP, all the MCDs, all transport department, police, everyone is there. Now your question may be, then why it is not improving? Yes, I will answer for that also, why it is not improving. But the state boards or the state Ministry of Environment, they are very well coordinating with all the departments. Is asked, the policy matters. So many policies are changed in Delhi city itself on the initiative of the state board and the ministry, state ministry I'm talking. I don't know how your team come to a conclusion that state board officers are saying they don't have the power to develop the standard. Every state board person knows they can make the standard in that we don't have to relax it. But where is the one example? You check the Delhi government's energy plant standard. We are far stricter than the standard of the standards. So I think something is seriously wrong with this study. Abhijit told it very clearly.
Dr. George, we are hearing you intermittently. Actually, I don't know if it's just me or are others able to hear Dr. George clearly?
No, ma'am.
His voice was
Intermittent voice.
Yeah. Dr. George, can we?
Hello.
Yes, I think we are hearing you, but hearing you intermittently on and off. So if this, yeah, can you try again? We are missing parts of your submission. Yes, sir.
Hello, are you getting my voice now?
Yes.
Yeah. As far as I can agree to only one thing, staff crunch. Yes, all the state boards are facing that. But then comes the question, Is there any way out to solve it? As Abhijit said, yes, the stations can be operated by the, it's not require a PhD or BTech or MTech person. We need good, experienced, properly trained person who can run it, and we have to somehow make it sure that he will stay with us. Otherwise, what happens, as soon as you train the people, they leave for the better pastures. And I can't blame that. So conditions are not so bad as your note is showing. Negativities are there, but so much positive part is there. There is so many success stories in the state boards. The dedicated people are there, knowledgeable people are there. Who is running the show? Yes, limitations are something. I think you have to rerun your study with a better sample size, and the responsible officer you have to contact who can answer. I want to stop here.
Thank you, sir. So I take your point. I know it may not have been a representative sample, but yes, I will also take that with a pinch of salt, because there was the need to go away from the Delhi situation and understand on the ground what's happening in other states. And my team, I think I will hand it over to Bhargav to actually share who was interviewed. It was not that they were not senior officials. Some of them were chairman and member secretary. So Bhargav, if you want to take the floor and share whatever you can.
I will leave once and join once again.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Purnima. And thank you all for the comments. I think they were very interesting. Just to clarify on the methodology, I think it was conducted with senior staff across many different pollution control boards. So 8 pollution control boards we spoke to. Almost all of them we have spoken to, both the member secretary as well as the chairperson involved, along with senior scientists who are at these pollution control boards. So it's not that we have spoken to only disgruntled junior staff. And the second part of this is that when we conducted these interviews, these were really in-depth. We conducted interviews that were anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour and 45 minutes long with these individuals. And what we have picked out from what we have distilled through our analysis is the sort of key themes that have emerged across all of these discussions. It's not that we have identified specific negative arguments that were put forward by certain individuals, but these are trends that we saw across all of the conversations that we had with these individuals. And there are often, the reason why qualitative work is done anonymously or without identifiers is also because individuals are able to share their concerns that they may have more freely in a way that they may not be able to if they are identified in report findings that are placed. Certainly, there are lots of positive things that are happening at many state control boards. There are lots of positive initiatives that are being taken both in the center as well as the states. There are lots of changes that are happening ever since, actually, in the time since we conducted this study, there are lots of changes that have happened. The momentum is certainly in the positive directions. What we have identified, we think, are actually areas that are supportive of the positions that the boards themselves take, which is that there needs to be a lot more attention provided to these regulatory bodies, because they are, as Dr. George himself admitted, they are understaffed to some extent. They do require some augmentation in technical capacity, as Dr. Pathak mentioned. And this is essentially making that case. This is the case that these boards are essential in the role that they conduct. These are required to perform a function that is essential for broad human health. And to perform that function effectively, we need to give them more care and attention. That's the argument that we are laying out in this document. It is not to criticize the work that is already being done. If there is a reason why it is focused on certain aspects and not the positive aspects, it is because we explicitly went out to find what gaps there are and what barriers individuals are facing within these boards. There are numerous documents that have spoken about the positive work that has been done by pollution control boards at the state as well as the center. This document was not meant to be that particular document. This was meant to identify where we can improve and where we can actually strengthen these agencies so that they can do their jobs better. We know that they're doing their jobs at their capacity, at the capability that they are able to deliver on right now. And this document was essentially meant to set up a case to say that, look, these the mandate that has been provided to them is wide. The backing that is provided to them is not as wide. And this needs to be augmented. And this is making the case that you should augment these boards so that they are able to better deliver on what they have been mandated by authorities that are outside there or higher up in some ways. So that's essentially the case that I would like to put forward.
Thanks, Bhargav. I will also reiterate what Bhargav stated. I mean, this was not to discount any of the good work that is being done, but in the scenario that things are not changing in many parts of the country in terms of air quality management, I think this was to do a bottom-up kind of an approach and see where the gaps might be in actual implementation of the NACs. I think that's what we started out to do, and that's what this report is about. May I again go to Dr. Moitra, and sir, do you have any thoughts on what has been discussed so far?
Ma'am, may I add one thing?
Take questions from the audience as well. Dr. Moitra.
What I think, we need to not only maintain the existing stations properly, for which we need capacity building in terms of training, recruitment of manpower and retention of manpower. We also need to increase our monitoring stations to cover the rural areas of our country that represents about 65% of the population and 90% of the land mass. So that is a big gap that we have seen in the national ambient stations, plus the ecologically sensitive areas which we have identified in our country, but we are not monitoring. So we have to increase far more than the existing 793 stations that are operating now. And in next 10 years, we would like to see that the number of stations has increased to cover the entire country, not only urban centric, it should be covering rural areas as well as the eco-sensitive areas, for which we need more manpower. We need more training institutes to cover the entire country. This is one point I would like to flag. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Moitra. I think that time and again, this has come up in so many discussions about the lack of monitoring, especially in the rural parts of the country. And I think that is just one aspect of this study. It has just kind of corroborated what is already known about the space. But certainly we are wanting to highlight over here the other aspects about the capacity building and the findings that we definitely got from a qualitative piece of research. So it meant that these are findings that happened from discussions with state board officials. It's not something that was made up. And so it is there for reality. And I think some of these were true for what they are, and some of our panelists have accepted that there is a huge need for training and capacity building. And I think also the lack of motivation and leadership, which are some of the issues that came out, I think that is also something that needs to be addressed. I mean, at the end of the day, we are talking here about maintaining good public health. And for that, I think the regulatory bodies have a role as well to play. And Dr. Abhijit Pathak, I think you were wanting to share something again. So please.
Yes, ma'am. One thing I want to suggest. So your study team, I think 2-3 years back, it's a very good report on assessment of state boards capacity. It was published by CAC. It's a fantastic report. Ultimate conclusion was there. Even for the industrial inspection, in a year, only 0.2 days man day is available for state boards. They have covered all the state boards in the country. So that report you can refer also. You can see that report. It's a fantastic report prepared by Sanjeev Kanchan and Chandra-Bhushan. That was a very good report of CAC on the quality work and the problem of SPCB, the manpower problem, infrastructure problem, funding problem, everything they assessed that in that report. You can refer that report also.
So,
But,
Dr. Just to clarify, we have referred to both those, both the CSE report as well as the Standing Committee report of Parliament on the functioning of the Pollution Control Board. So both of those are cited and referred to in providing the rationale for why this study was necessary.
okay.
So before I revert back to Dr. George, Vidushi is also somebody who was part of this work. Would you like to share any thoughts?
I think I was just going to add to Dr. Pathak's comment about, and especially because we refer to the parliamentary committee report, standing committee report, an important point to note there is that was a 2008 study, and it's been over a decade since then. But the study said that the average inspections per industry was 0.3 for Maharashtra and 0.63 for Karnataka in 2008. And these figures seem to be the same even now. We couldn't have a comparison across states, which is why we didn't present that data today. But it seems to be pretty much the same in the decade or so since the time that study came up. And I think most of the points that Bhargav stated, I kind of reiterate that this is something which was because it was anonymous, which was why it was people were able to share their concerns and their thoughts about what was lacking and where things could be improved, especially for state boards, more so for like the SPCBs rather than the CPCB. And we spoke to staff across the board. So it was not just lower level staff, or it was not just the member secretaries. Everyone who was involved in the process of implementation of the standards, from the lab in charges to the environmental engineers to the people at the leadership level. We spoke to everyone, and this is like a holistic sort of study with everyone's thoughts and comments in mind. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Vidushi. So Dr. George, would you want to add anything from your end?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Look, if you're talking about the state like Delhi, where major industries are not there, very small and tiny. And when you talk about the 0.6%, yes, inspections are less. But you have to think the state boards are giving the long-term consent, and they are attending on the surprise basis this industry. Whenever there is, they feel there is some flaw. And now we are working on this all online data from all the major industries. Whenever they are getting the data, it's exceeding. Yes, they are attending it. And otherwise, for the networks, noise, or air, of course, there is some problems. I am sitting here in Delhi. I may be privileged to get all type of assistance from OEM to anyone. They are supporting us. So I think our networks are a little bit more superior. But staff crunch is there, no doubt.
I want to just turn over to, thank you, sir. I just want to see if there are any questions now from the audience. But I think there are a couple there. But before I address those, I think there was a hand raised by Dr. Rameshwar, who's from the Ministry of Health. Dr. Rameshwar, I thought you had raised your hand. Would you want to share your inputs or ask a question? Dr. Rameshwar, okay, not sure that I thought he raised his hand. Okay, on the questions from the audience, there's one asking, this is from Satyan Vayude, asking why not give monitoring work to private labs which are recognized by MOEFCC? Would somebody like to take that?
Yes, may I?
Sure, sir.
Yes, most of the state pollution control boards authorize the laboratories, recognize the laboratories which are already approved by MOUSP, the EPA, or by NABL lab. We are taking their continuous support of the lab. They are monitoring for state.
Okay, so then thank you, sir. So the next question is from Shruti Pandey, asking what are the gaps in India's rural air pollution monitoring? Can these findings be inferred to rural India as well? Bhargav, would you want to take that?
So I don't know about the findings, particularly about rural India. I think generally, I think we are all aware that rural India monitoring capacity does need to be scaled up. I think Dr. Pathak also mentioned that during his earlier, Dr. Pathak and Dr. Moitra both mentioned that during their earlier submissions. I think it's certainly an area that we need to think about how to scale up rural monitoring so that we ensure coverage, but also do it in a cost-effective manner. Setting up a CAQM is not a cost-effective method to go about doing this. Perhaps there are ways to do it using satellite monitoring that may be more cost-effective, and that may provide us scale more quickly than if we go about setting up monitors in areas where we may either not be able to regularly calibrate them, or just the cost involved would be prohibitive.
Thank you.
Rightly said, Dr. Bhargav. Dr. Bhargav.
Yes.
And in my opinion also, so we have to use the satellite data at least for the PM10 and PM2.5 to have a rural maps also. And some areas, this is not, I don't want to call it a monitoring. I want to have a rural survey, thorough survey, not the monitoring. And we can deploy also low-cost sensors for this survey purpose. Accepted that there may be 20-30%, even 35-40% error in those data, but we will have some data matched with our satellite mapping. That will be helpful. Expanding a network to rural place at this juncture, I think it will be very optimistic one. And already we are facing problem even in urban centric monitoring network. So in rural, I think it will be a problematic one. So depending on the survey mode, we can go for the survey mode to have at least some data in rural basis.
I would concur, and I would actually just take that opportunity to also plug the work being done by the Chair Consortium based out of PHFI, which is working to expand work that we have done in Delhi already, which is modeling air quality at 1 by 1 kilometer grid resolution for the entire country, using both satellite data as well as ground monitoring and chemical transport models, etc.
But even though the network has expanded in Delhi, 37 monitoring stations, CAQM station, along with 10 manual monitoring stations. What the result is, when the station number was 17 only, average of Delhi city, and today with the 37 stations, the average of Delhi city is almost same. Almost same. But the facility we could get, the result we got, we could identify some hotspots where the problematic areas are. So expanding a network in a 1480 square kilometer in Delhi, having 37 CAQM network is a lavish thing. I feel so. It's a lavish thing. But still, as if the whole air quality monitoring is Delhi centric, we are expanding the network like anything. It may not be needed for a Delhi or 37 station, as the 17 station can give us average data of the same the 37 station is giving. Only for identifying the hotspot, this survey is the most cheapest and better option, so that number of stations may be increased to anything. So that way the study should incorporate and recommend this type of planning. It will create a weight for that one. That's my submission.
Noted. Thank you.
Dr. Parekh, thank you. So there is a question here from Sunil Dahia. So is there any specific reason or roadblock why SEMS data and CAQMS installed by industries is not made available and public by all SPCBs, as they supply most of it to CPCB, which could fill some gap in air quality monitoring in areas beyond city boundaries, that is current NAM. So
CAQMS data is already in public domain. CAQMS data, CCR portal, from CCR portal, anybody can download the CAQMS data. Whichever data in our network connected to our site. Industrial CAQMS data, we have issues. We have issues because industry never wants that their data is crossing the ambient air quality standard. So using those data, unless we are directly monitoring those data, the quality of those data, that those are useless data, I think. Regarding SEMS data, same we are just rolling it out. Same data, on the basis of same data, regulation cannot be done because same means our present regulation in emission monitoring is the industry has to comply 24/7. But if you monitor with an instrumentation, the spikes will be there. Spikes is 100% expected. And with those spikes, the public will not hear those spikes as it is mandated to meet 24/7 standards. So those spikes will be taken as a violation. And these violations will be 100% there, like regarding starting, startup, then closing down, some problem in the APCDs and all these things. These spikes will be there in industrial operations. So those spikes will be hyped out, and this hype will create a lot of problem in public awareness because the public cannot take those data in a good spirit. The countries who are making these data public, they have a load-based standard, a long-term standard. That's why CPCB is not yet decided to make it public, the same data.
okay. Well, I think that there's still room for discussion over there, but let me, in the interest of time, move on to the next question. This is from RS and says, makes 2 points actually. One is, unless you have a geostationary satellite, satellites can only take a snapshot once a day and cannot detect pollution at night. And secondly, running a monitoring network requires a certain degree of technical expertise, which is kind of debating on the submission earlier by the panelists. So does anyone have a comment on that? It's more a statement than a question.
I agree with the gentleman. The presently the Modi satellite or NASA satellite crosses India in two times in a day. And satellite is having another problem. In the cloudy days, you will not get any data. So these are the issues. And even in the meeting with Secretary MOD, Ministry of Earth Sciences or MOED. So we also, committee also suggested to have our own satellite for the pollution monitoring. So that is, ISRO is also was a party of that one. They proposed, why don't we have our own satellite to have a 24-hour data? So that I don't think that in near future it will be there. But there is a thinking or thoughts are there already. And you rightly pointed out, these are really a problematic issue.
So there is, thank you, Dr. Pai. So there is one more from an anonymous attendee asking the obvious question. Curious to understand how the PCBs are addressing the manpower crunch problem. We know it is there. So what's being done to address it? So Dr. George or Dr. Moises?
I can start off from what I've spoken to people about. So essentially, like I mentioned in the presentation, a lot of PCBs are relying on contractual employees. for fulfilling the requirements of their sort of everyday day-to-day functioning. Only the technical staff, and especially in those who are like higher ranking, are the ones who are like permanent employees. So, and obviously the process of recruiting and hiring is very cumbersome and very lengthy. Some of the PCBs also said things like they listed out the vacancy 3 years ago, until now that position had not been fulfilled, which is also one of the many reasons why there are like close to 50% vacant positions in some of the PCBs. So in essence, I don't think like the manpower issue is being addressed to the extent that it should be, because of various reasons such as funding as well as yeah.
Thank you, Vidushi. I think mixed views there, because on the one hand, we did hear that there is a lot of financial resources, and we did hear from the ground a different story. So something wrong somewhere, obviously. So I will turn over actually to Mr. Deepankar Saha, who's raised his hand and would like to speak up. Can you, Sriram, do we have to unmute him, or will he be able to speak up? He's one of the attendees. It's probably not going to allow. So may I request you to post your comment question? Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we can.
Sorry. The thing is that I'm traveling, so you may not be able to hear me properly. But the thing is that the methodology adapted for evaluation of the study.
Sorry to interrupt you, but please can you please introduce yourself first, and very briefly in the next couple of minutes share your submission, because we are watching time.
I am Dr.
Thank you.
Work for Central Pollution Control Board for 30 years, and whatever you see the guidelines of monitoring of air quality, the SAMS guidelines, the specification for emissions, it was a contribution led by me along with my colleagues always, and Mr. Pathak also mentioned this thing. So after superannuation, I was working for the State Pollution Control Board. So earlier I used to see everything from the Central Pollution Control Board perspective. Now I have the opportunity to work for the State Pollution Control Board, so I can see the perspectives at the national level. So top down to bottoms up approach, I'm having that exposure. The thing is that first of all, some study has been carried out, okay, but the methodology needs to be revised. This is not the correct way of doing the methodology. And then next, my thing is that India is polluted. That is not a good, correct statement. Our Indo-Gangetic plain is only polluted, and that too only during the winter months. And people, an organization like yours must explain and tell the public and people so as to build more confidence on the pollution control boards. That should be the aim of any study. Because we are not able to gain the confidence of the people. That is the greatest problem we are having. We are having very much linkage with all the activities. We are understaffed, that is well taken. And the coordination is not at all missing. We are very much coordinated and trying to do our job. And Pathak has already, I was about to tell the same thing. The minimum number of stations and maximum use of the data would be the motto. And Because we have to work with the minimum workforce, let us work with the minimum set of data, and but proper utilization of the data should be the prime importance for a country like India. That that aspect we have to find out. Not only the we don't have this, we don't have this, somebody is not doing this. This is cannot be the right approach for Indian condition. And we should not compare ourselves with other countries. We should have our own policy. We should have our own mechanism to do the job, and we are trying to deliver the thing. But air quality management is a multi-sectoral issue. When there is a shift from routine to comfort like we have selected, we have not really taken into account the sustainable development. Rather, we have we have we have taken the exploitation mode of everything, and we are not taking care of our land. Those are the aspects that needed to be handled, because this is the air. And I understand the integration among the all components of our environment, including the socio-economic conditions, are required to be taken care. And my last observation is that until and unless we are able to provide uniform facilities, infrastructure to all, we cannot have uniform goal for entire country. That is not possible. We are suffering because of subtropical region. We are dusty. We keep on telling, and probably we have spent more than 3,000-4,000 crores of rupees for improving the air quality in Delhi NCR, shifted all industries, shifted brought back, shifted diesel, discarded diesel, brought CNG. We did a lot of experiments by reducing the lead also, but still we are not able to improve the air quality. It is a seasonal phenomenon that we have to, once again, we have to remember. And the central government has already notified. When I was in CPCB, I expressed my
Excuse me, Dr. Sahab, we are not hearing you.
Secretary, Ministry of Environment, and our chairman, that if you are looking daily at one unit, it will not resolve the purpose. We have to have similar approach for the NCR unity. In that country, I'm traveling, ma'am. I'm sorry. To redo the. Thank you. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Sahab, thank you. Yes, hello, sir. I think we're hearing some disturbances in the background, and but thank you so much. We take your point. I think your views are also valid. But just to say that, you know, this study was not started out to be one that was going to pick up all the negatives. Like we shared earlier, this was to hash out the issue of why air quality management is such a problem, and what may be the gaps and the barriers in the implementation of the guidelines. And we did want to understand this issue from the ground, and that was the reason why we interviewed officials from the SPCBs. And I understand that you were one of the interviewees as well. So I'm sure your perspectives were also taken into account in this report. And the intention was not to discount all of the good work that happens, but definitely to bring into center stage the reasons for why air quality continues to be an issue in India. And if those are because of infrastructural issues, because of lack of capacity building or, from the ground building institutional capacity and a lack of motivation, in the regulatory boards. If that is the case, then that certainly needs to be addressed, because the bottom line is to make sure that public health is not at stake. And I think we have run out of time here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. The report is out in public. There's no way that we're going to review the methodology. The study is the way it is. And it was started out with a certain concept in terms of the objectives that we stated at the beginning. And the findings and the recommendations are there for you to read and share widely. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us here today. We will welcome any further feedback on the emails that you have registered, but please do share any further feedback. And we are glad that we were joined today by a large number of attendees. Thank you to all the panelists again, Dr. Moitra, Dr. Pathak, Dr. George, Bhargav, and Vidushi. Thank you so much for your time today and joining us on the panel.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
For coordinating all of this and for organizing this panel. Thank you.
Thank you.